Alright, today's video is going to be how to replace your front axle in a Subaru Impreza WRX STI. Almost every Subaru from like early 90s up until still currently will pretty much all be the same. So first step obviously is going to be pull the wheel off. Next, put the light on. Next, there's one of two ways to go about this. You can disconnect the strut, in which case you have to disconnect the two strut bolts, remove them both, disconnect your ABS wire, disconnect your brake line, just so that you're not stretching them. I think you can leave them on, but I just pull them off to be safe. 32 millimeter hub or axle nut, not hub. These are both 19 millimeter and these are both 12. The top bolt on most of these cars will be a camber bolt, so I suggest marking it with a paint marker of some sort or whatever you prefer. Another method to doing the axle is to disconnect the lower control arm with this bolt. I believe is a 17 millimeter. And then the rear mount is, I think those are 19s, I'm pretty sure. With this car though, because it has the U-frame, you kind of got to take more stuff apart in order to do it that way. Just disconnecting those, you're not going to be able to lower it much at all because the U-frame is still in the way. So with most Imprezas, they have the U-frame. I think Foresters do not, but most of the time I prefer to just do the strut method, although you are slightly changing the camber position. But with the rear mount, you will be slightly changing the caster position. So either way, you truly should get an alignment after you do an axle, but if you mark it, it's gonna be within probably 0.2 of a degree, so it should be fine. Now we will take out the 12 millimeter for the brake line and the ABS wire. Oh boy. So now we got both of those out. We can pull the knuckle out of the strut. You can hear the axle falling apart. So this one's a little stuck. Another thing I should mention is disconnecting your sway bar end link will help immensely with pulling the knuckle down to give you room. This one especially is in there very tight. But I think the lower the car is, the tighter it's gonna be. But you do not have to disconnect the sway bar end link, but you can if you choose to. Now the axle nut. And this axle has been out because the wrong axle was bought and I had to put this one back in, so this one's going to come out nice and easy, but these do tend to get seized in here. What I usually do is I take the nut off Then I'll get a hammer. You get a punch, but if you are careful enough, you hit it a few times with a hammer, see if it budges. If it doesn't, then you grab a punch, stick it in this detent here, bang away on it, and if that still doesn't work, you could also put the nut on there, but the it usually has a indentation, so the threads are kind of already messed up, and then it'll be stuck on there. But either way, then you can just make sure you don't mushroom this out, is basically what I'm saying. Don't mushroom it out so much that you can't fit a axle nut back on it and that you can't push it through the hub. So what's very handy is an air hammer if it's ever totally seized, but I've had one so seized that the air hammer didn't do its damn thing, and I had to take the whole knuckle off the car and take it to a shop with a press, because at the time I didn't have a press. So just be mindful, these do tend to get seized in there, so when you put it back on, use anti-seize. So mine's obviously free. We still have to get the strut completely out of the knuckle. I'm gonna have to pause it. I need 2 hands for that, and then I'll show you what's next. Okay, we got the knuckle completely disconnected from the strut, so this isn't gonna be very easy with one hand. So basically what you want to do is get the knuckle, or get the axle out of the hub, obviously. So there we go, we got it loose. Now this is the hard part, especially with this car. You're gonna have to pry down on the whole control arm hub assembly in order to weasel this out, and there's probably no way I'm gonna be able to film that for you. I hope you guys saw that. So what I did was turn the knuckle to open up this area, and then I had to pry down on the control arm with this pry bar, and then you have to just work it out. It's a pain, but that's how you gotta do it. There's no simple way. Alright, now with this car, grab the light. With this car, it has a male end that goes into the transmission. With this is a 05 STI. With a 04, it will have a dowel pin. The axle will be slightly different, and it will have a dowel pin here that you'll have to hit out, because the stub comes out of the transmission and the axle is a female end. So with this one, all you really have to do is get a pry bar up in between those little fins and the axle. Just be careful and just give it a good little pop, and it should come right on out. So, and I should have mentioned that the transmission is going to leak some fluid. I already knew that, but forgot again. So this car, like I said, I already took the axle out, and it leaked quite a bit. It really shouldn't leak that much, I don't think, to my knowledge, but I could be wrong. Either way, just check your fluid when you're done. Give it a drive, check it again, check it 2 weeks from then, and if it's still good, you're still good. This one, I checked it like 3 times and it's been full every time, so I have no explanation. Usually there's a kind of a second catch. You gotta pop it out. You can probably do it by hand, but easier with the pry bar. and that thing was hot as hell. And there you have it, your axle's out. So it's gonna be literally the exact opposite for installing it. The only thing is this little ring is what clips the axle into the transmission. You want to make sure that the axle is fully seated in the transmission. It might look like it, but there will be a little gap. If there's any gap at all, it is not seated. That, you know, that's how it should look. No more, no less. So I'll show you when this new one is installed. But if you can't get it in, it's kind of a pain. The best way I have found to do it is you get all the splines lined up. You get as far in as you can by just gently pushing it in by hand. And then you put all the pressure inward to compress the CVs. And then you don't necessarily have to, but I put the axle nut on here, thread it on, and then with a dead blow, you give it a good firm hit, and 9 times out of 10, that pops the circlip into place. But just make sure you're nice and straight and lined up so that you don't damage the seal on the transmission. One other thing to note is the ABS ring. This guy had a lot of trouble getting the correct part. He went to the parts store like 3 times and they kept giving him the same axle. I actually accidentally installed it without checking, and then the car threw an ABS code because the ring was recessed back here for a 04 STI and WRX style. For whatever reason, the 05, well, I know why. It's because it uses the bolt-in hubs instead of the press-in hubs, so it uses a different ABS ring style. So you had to order this offline actually, but make sure your ABS ring on your new axle matches the same placement as the old one. You will have problems, especially with a car like this with a active all-wheel drive system. It's not going to enjoy not getting a reading from one position. Alright, so we got it in place. It's pushed all the way in by hand until you feel the circlip. We're going to lift it up nice and straight, apply pressure inward, and then hit it with the dead blow. I believe that was it. Let's double check. And she's in. All the way seated. That's how it's done. Alright, we're gonna pull this nut off. We'll hook them up with a little bit of anti-seize on here, and then we'll get her back in place. Hopefully this one goes in easy. Alright, a little bit of massaging and we got it in there. Now you're just going to want to line everything back up into place. You're probably going to have to rotate I would suggest turning the wheel before you take everything apart, but now I'm just going to have to turn the knuckle a little bit to get it in line with the strut. Pull your axle in, put your nut on. You may or may not need me to push up on the knuckle to get the holes lined up here. This is somewhat of a tight fit. You could probably, you can see there's a little rust on here. You can knock that off with a hammer or sand it down a little to make it easier fit. But if not, you can just get it started and jack up from the bottom, and you'll be able to position it where it needs to go. So I just hammered this on with the impact and then hit it with the chisel into the detent so that it can't come loose. Some people say you should torque it with a torque wrench. I don't bother, never had a problem, but that's it.